Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Global Partnership on Marine Litter webinar on Marine Litter and Emergency Response, hosted by South Asia Cooperative Environment Program today. My name is Priyankari Alexander. I work as a program officer at SACEP, and I'll be moderating this webinar today. As we all know, marine litter is one of the major environmental issues of the 21st century that needs immediate attention. Though it is termed as an environmental issue, it is an economic, environmental, human health, and aesthetic problem posing a complex and multidimensional challenges. A fifth of the marine litter comes from accidental or illegal littering, and maritime incidents across the world contributes significantly to that accidental spill of marine litter. Recent maritime incident of MV Express Pearl off the coast of Sri Lanka is an example of how much damage accidental spills of marine litter can cause. Incidents such as this can be used as case studies to understand and build solutions for the future. Today, we have a set of speakers who would speak on their experiences and provide key insights on marine litter spill. You have the opportunity to submit text questions to all the presenters by typing your questions anytime into the chat box during their presentation. Just please make sure you mention your name, the organization, and the place where you are joining from. Your questions will be addressed during the question and answer session at the end of all the presentation. Now, without further ado, we will turn the time over to His Excellency Ambassador Ashraf Haidari, Director General of SACEP, who will speak on SACEP's role on marine litter and maritime incidents. Excellency, floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Priyankari. And I have a PowerPoint presentation. I'd like to ask Mr. Khalil to bring it up and play it out as I speak. Well, first of all, please allow me to thank UNEP, Global Partnership on Marine Litter, for the opportunity to have this very timely webinar and to discuss experiences and expertise and exchange lessons to be learned based on the recent case which Priyankari, you pointed out. So distinguished colleagues and attendees, to start, I would like to say a few words about SACEP, South Asia Cooperative Environment Program, which is a regional intergovernmental organization that was established back in 1982 by the 8 member states of South Asia that include Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, Bhutan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, of course, Maldives. And the purpose of the pioneers, those who established this intergovernmental organization, was to address the prevailing and also challenges of environment and climate change on the horizon in the region. So mainly through, of course, fostering regional cooperation, and as well as exchanging and facilitating to exchange information, knowledge, and technology. The key priority areas which we cover at SACEP include waste management, air quality, climate change, biodiversity, both marine and terrestrial, sustainable consumption and production under the Sustainable Development Goals. SACEP also hosts the South Asia SEAS program, which is one of the 18 regional SEAS programs under UNEP. And the Asian SEAS Action Plan, which we helped implement, was adopted back in 1995 by the 5 maritime countries in the region, excluding the 3 mountainous. The objective of the action plan was to protect and manage the marine environment and related coastal ecosystems of the region. And it identifies 4 priority areas that include integrated coastal zone management, protection of marine environment from land-based activities, human resources development, development of national and regional oil and chemical spill contingency plan. Marine litter, as we all know, is garbage that ends up in oceans and is known as one of the most destructive environmental hazards to marine ecosystems. Marine litter, as we know, includes mostly inert waste materials like plastics, glass, rubber, and so forth. And a fifth of those are coming from accidents or illegal dumping. Once plastic is in our oceans, it flows on ocean currents and causes damage to extended areas. It is, of course, very harmful to marine wildlife habitats and human health, and it can facilitate the transport of organic and inorganic contaminants. Marine litter is also a serious issue to the visual and other aesthetic sensitivities of tourists and local visitors to beaches. Measuring the full economic cost of marine litter is complex because of the wide range of economic, social, and environmental impacts. And so recognition of the issue following extended work, a regional marine litter action plan for the region was adopted in 2019. And together with that, SACEP also became a member of the Global Partnership on Marine Litter. As I just said, one of the sources of marine litter is those coming from accidents or maritime incidents. South Asia seas, as we know, lie within one of the busiest shipping lanes globally, connecting Europe, Africa, and East Asia and Oceania. So that's why the higher maritime traffic, the higher, of course, the number of maritime incidents. Indeed, there are gaps in the implementation of international conventions regionally. For some have not exceeded, others lack the capacity to implement the conventions. So as a result, South Asia is unfortunately remains at the high risk of pollution from maritime incidents. So keeping that in mind, and a mandate of the South Asia Seas program, all members of the South Asia Seas region entered into an MOU and devised the regional oil spill contingency plan in the region. The MOU came into force in 2018, and of course the contingency plan that covers guidance for national contingency plans, procedures for regional assistance and communications skills, mechanisms. So looking at the role of SACEP today as relevant to our discussion today, we are a regional organization, like I said, helping address marine litter as well as regional coordination or coordinating entity on marine emergency response. The incident which my colleague pointed out a while ago that concerns us the most recently is the MV Express Pearl. That was a merchant ship traveling from Hazira port to Colombo, and it was carrying 3 main types of cargo: bunker fuel, variety of different hazardous chemicals, and plastic noodles. And the incident took place on May 20th of this year. We were notified of this incident informally, and the assistance under the regional MOU was requested on 25th, so 5 days after the incident. And as soon as we got that, it was shared with the regional focal points, and assistance especially was requested from the Indian Coast Guard. Our involvement included formal in terms of facilitating exchange of information between member countries and providing information to relevant agencies in the region. And of course, we use both formal and informal channels. So in this regard, I would like to thank the Indian Coast Guard for the swift response and assistance they provided in the incident. I would also like to commend the efforts of all involved in ensuring there was no oil spill. Here I would like to note that the biggest impact from the incident appears to be the plastic pollution or marine litter. As it is with any other incident, there were challenges and difficulties during the incident we noticed as a regional body. The incident itself was riddled with complexities. There were sensitive environments within the impact zone of the incident, which were significant in terms of economically and ecologically. This raises the stakes of the operation. The monsoon weather was another key factor which made things very difficult in terms of response. Was one of the main factors that actually exacerbated the incident, as well as delayed efforts to quell the incident. And then the debris that spilled from the ship carried the toxic materials further than it normally would. So quite simply, it was an incident that took place in a non-ideal location in horrible weather with a bad combination of cargo. The second challenge I'd like to highlight is the communication difficulties we had. Unfortunately, this incident happened at a time when all 5 member countries to the MOU had gone and still remain in some cases into lockdown due to COVID. In most contact points in the member countries were working from home, which, as we know, creates a lot of communications problems, as we experienced prior to starting this webinar. As much of the communication, formally and informally, took place online. As a result, it was difficult to get the messages across to expedite the response process. And so also simply because this MOU came into force and then became operational in 2019, and then of course the situation in individual countries, and also given the COVID, we have not been able to really improve communications as much as we would have been able to do so. And so the third challenge I'd like to discuss is the regional MOU, and that has gone into effect, doesn't really cover plastic spills or marine debris in emergency response. The regional MOU has only detailed SOPs on tackling oil and hazardous chemical spill, but not plastic or inert debris spill. In fact, most of the legal instruments related to maritime incidents focuses mainly on oil and hazardous chemical spills, and emergency support structures relating to maritime incidents follows similar suit. So many of the legal instruments that focuses on marine litter does not consider it to have an emergency response. Keeping those challenges in mind and going forward, so SACEP, we have a few things that we need to work on, and to do so, we'll look forward to improving the existing regional communication apparatus for such emergency responses, review regional plans on marine litter and those on emergency response with the intention of bridging the gap, and also accelerate implementation of Marine Letter Action Plan, which covers key aspects like research and data collection, which should foster partnerships and awareness. And as the regional organization for maritime incidents, we would like to welcome any suggestions or requests from member countries to help improve their capacities and in turn regional capacity in tackling issues like what we experience. SACEP, we are firmly committed to serving our member states and align with our mandate and our governing council's decisions. Thank you so much, and I look forward to a productive discussion. Thanks.
Thank you, Excellency, for highlighting the proactive role of SACEP as a regional coordinating body that is committed to protect and manage maritime environment and related coastal ecosystems in the South Asia region. Now, let me invite Mr. A.J.M. Gunasekara, Deputy General Manager at Maritime Environment Protection Authority, Sri Lanka, to make his presentation. MEPA is the apex body responsible for prevention, controlling, and managing pollution in Sri Lanka's marine environment, and is the focal entity when it comes to maritime incidents. Mr. Gunasekara, please take the floor.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Priyankari, and hello, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Priyankari. First of all, I would like to thank SACEP Director General and the Senior Program Officer, Mr. Samant, and SACEP all staff for organizing this event and inviting me to do this presentation. As mentioned by DG SACEP, this is highly complex incident. It raised several issues to us. There were several chemical dangerous cargo, and this incident located at the highly environmental and economically sensitive area, 9.5 nautical miles away from our main commercial hub at Colombo. Actually, after happening of this incident, we have initiated government-led pollution response operation as a responsible government agency for prevention, reduction, and control of marine pollution in Sri Lankan waters due to shore-based and ship-based activities. As mentioned earlier, this is highly complex incident. These container vessels are newly built container vessels, Singaporean flag vessels, newly built one. This is the 5th journey of this vessel, which carries different kind of chemical, including hazardous chemical. Basically, these vessels came from India to Sri Lanka. There was a the nitric acid leak in 11th May, but without disclosing these facts, they enter into our anchorage and anchored there. Then crew inform us there is some fumes coming from the vessels. Then the Sri Lankan SLPA, Sri Lankan Port Authority Fire Department went there. Then they mentioned that they have used their carbon dioxide flooding system, and they controlled fire. Again, evening there was fumes. Again, they mentioned that there is something going on, and accordingly, this incident occurred in our water. 19th, then there was a fume. Then 20th until 25th, there was a fire. This vessel carries nearly 1,486 containers, including nitric acid 25 tons, caustic soda solid, sodium methoxide solution, cosmetic, methanol, vinyl acetate inhibited, and other chemical, including including epoxy resin 9,700 tons, synthetic resin 177 tons, plastic bead 132 tons, low density polyethylene 554 tons, high density polyethylene 747 tons. Like that, they carry, this vessel carries huge amount of different kind of chemical, hazardous chemical, and the plastic, especially these plastic pellets noodles. Other than that, there was a 278 metric tons of bunk oil and 50 metric tons of marine gas oil. With this incident, we realized that there is a high risk of occurring oily spill in our waters very close to our commercial hub of Sri Lanka, and highly sensitive area. Considering the possible pollution, we requested to the SACEP to get assistance from the Indian Coast Guard, Indian authorities, based on the South Asian Regional Oil Spill Chemical and Oil Spill Contingency Plan. Basically, there was a high risk. Based on that, as a responsible authority for the activation of National Oil Spill Contingency Plan, we have taken necessary measures to activate the National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. These are the different kind of pollutant, including plastic and other type of pollutant on board of these ships. Due to this accident, basically all these containers and all pollutant enter into our waters. Different kind of chemical, it include a high toxic chemical, and other than that, there are other type of chemicals and substances, including food materials. Then the basically, as I mentioned earlier, 19 there was a fire. Then the fire aggregated. When there was a 25th night, there was an explosion. With the explosion, some amount of containers enter into sea and release the cargo inside these containers. Then the 26th morning, we reported, we got several information from third parties that some areas of the Gampaha district coastal area highly polluted with noodle, plastic beads. Other than that, that is the visible part. Then the burned, different kind of material, burned and virgin plastic pellet we were noticed in our coastal area. This is the incident development. Fire, there was a heavy fire, then the explosion, then finally this vessel sunk into the sea 9.5 nautical miles away from our commercial ports, Colombo. This is the development. Basically, now already this vessel is sunk. It is as a wreck. Now the ship owner has already appointed caretaker. They are in the process of taking necessary action for removal of this wreck. Other than this shipwrecks, there are more than I think more than 200 containers still located in different areas of seabed. We don't know condition of these containers, whether it is intact or whether already these containers release its inside cargoes into the water column. Due to the rough monsoon weather condition, it is very difficult to do anything. Wreck removal, salvage of containers. Again, now it is like 55 days. Still, a small amount of oil is emitting from the ships due to rough sea condition. It is very difficult to have response at sea. But this is light oil. It is disappearing. The oil sheen is like 2 to 10 kilometers sometimes, but it is disappearing. It is not polluting our coastline so far, but it is still leaking. Again, the fire and explosion on 25th. Due to this fire, huge amount of containers released into the sea. Then the material on these containers contaminated our shoreline heavily in Negombo area, basically, especially tourism area, including Negombo Lagoon, highly sensitive, highly productive areas, highly contaminated due to this incident. As a responsible government agency, MEPA initiated National Oil Spill Contingency Plan, and even there was also Indian Coast Guard 2 vessels. But our contingency plan also not covered this nodal pollution. But considering importance of this matter, for the shoreline cleanup activities, we implemented procedure laid down on our National Oil Spill Contingency Plan. There were incident management team, then the shoreline on-scene commander, then the site coordinators. We appoint site coordinators. Under the site coordinators, there are beach cleaning team. Here you can see heavily contaminated beach areas. We basically clean early days with the support of 3 forces, basically Army, Navy, Air Force, and the Coast Guard. Due to COVID situation, COVID epidemic situation, there were lockdown, but even with this lockdown situation, basically first 2-3 days, we have more than 1,000 people to clean up carry out cleanup activities. Basically, this is the contaminated shoreline. Nearly 700 kilometers polluted. Not the entire 700 kilometers from the Kalpitia to Kirinda area. With some patches, we identify some patches, but some areas in the, especially Negombo and the Putlam and the Colombo, highly contaminated with plastic nodule. You can see here red color places, basically high contamination, medium and the low contamination. Medium green color, low contaminations yellow color. This is the pollution level here, contaminated shoreline, where basically now it's took more than 55 days. Still some areas daily basis contaminate with this plastic nodule. Some plastic nodule packets, 25 kilogram packets released from these containers due to subsea condition. Time to time, this pellets released from these bags, and it contaminates our shoreline. Basically, this is the shoreline area. Basically, highly contaminated, low, medium, none. Basically, 614 kilometers polluted as a pockets. Only some areas, not the entire area. There are some areas highly polluted, highly contaminated. These pellets. Our cleanup strategies, basically, we have implemented our national contingency plan, shoreline cleanup procedures. Our strategy basically based on proper accelerated cleanup along the coastline, then environmental sound management of shoreline, and like this we have initiated again with this incident. Ship owner and the PNI club appointed OSR to help us, and the ITOPF came here to give technical guidance to us. With the support of ITOPF and the OSR, we have carried out this operational process. MEPA beach coordinators, we appointed each site coordinators. We carry out daily shoreline surveys. Based on this survey data, we decided how many number of sites, how many number of kilometers we are going to clean up, how many coordinators we are going to use, how many sites, how many number of people we are going to use. Based on our shoreline assessment procedure, based on that daily basis, we carry out shoreline cleanup activities. We have collected huge amount of burnt, unburnt plastic nodules during this period. Basically, shoreline contaminants, we can see different kind of plastic material, microplastics less than 5 millimeters. These plastic nodules are 3 millimeters, less than 3 millimeters. This is a microplastic. Then there was a macroplastic due to burning these some plastic particle nurdles get together, burn black color rocky-like material. Then the macroplastic, other macro pollution, very big size plastic burn material, and again the containers, some more than 8 containers reached to shoreline so far. Again, based on the nodal contamination, we with the support of ITOPF and the OSRL, we divided this coastline based on the contamination: highly contaminated area, medium contaminated area, low contaminated area. Based on this contamination level, we have divided this contaminated shoreline area into 3 different categories. Based on that, we have deploy required personnel to carry out beach cleaning operation. This is the basic cleanup routine: shoreline assessment, identify high pollution area, appoint site coordinators and support team. Then we provide necessary resources, because due to COVID and early days there was some chemical also there. We have provided required PPs to all these people. Then the food refreshment, water, then the waste collected, we temporarily stored. Then finally we stored this all waste in our warehouse. Basically, during this incident, there wasn't any experience handling of this nature incident to us. Basically, with the support of ITOPF and the OSRL, we have used different kind of manual. We have actually practiced different kind of manual cleanup strategies. Basically, we earlier, based on the density, we have separated these nurdles from the sand based on the density, and the basically we have selected different manual cleanup method, local manual cleanup method. You can see here this process, and other people who are deploying different kind of strategies, cleanup strategies, manual cleanup strategies to carry out beach cleanup operations. Again, the mechanical cleanup strategies, we have introduced plumbers, backhoes. Again, the one of the inventor here, he invented one machine to remove these plastic nurdles from the sand. One area, basically Sarukpur, we call it Sarukpur beach. Basically, there were buried debris in shoreline area more than 1 meter depth. Even if you dig a hole, we can see huge amount of plastic nurdle. Considering that one inventor deploy one machine, using that we managed to recover most of the sort out most of the plastic nurdles from this shoreline.
Mr. Jagat, you have to be a little bit quick on your presentation.
Okay. In the preventive strategies, some sensitive area like lagoon, we have initiated deployed oil boom to prevent entering of these nurdles into the lagoon. Again, this is the final cleanup. Actually, more than 54 days we have carried out this cleanup activity. Nearly 21,531 personnel use. We have collected number of bags, and the bag counts more than 2,305 bags. We have collected more than 3,000 tons. We have already collected debris and other contaminants from our beaches. We stored these at one of the warehouse, and the containers, these all waste, according to the national law, these waste considered as a hazardous waste, but finally we have to sort it into different categories, whether we have to check it whether it is contaminated or not. Again, the new development, now after the lockdown period, now we are again some volunteers and the third parties involved with us. Red Cross Society of Sri Lanka, they are providing manpower to us. Fishing families also, we are selected some people from fishing family who suffered due to this incident, who lost their income opportunities. Again, we are getting some equipment from international agencies like some NGOs, Endoplastic Waste Alliance in Singapore. Again, this incident created a lot of issues. We reported more than 602 turtle deaths in different areas. Of course, again, the dolphin waves, but we have to link. After this incident, we see such dead carcasses, dead bodies we found, but we have to link with this incident. That is one of the challenge. And then the basic activities as per the Marine Pollution Prevention Act, we took legal action under the criminal liability, under the civil liability. We can recover our cost. But this is the container vessel. CLC and PAN convention is not going to involve. Only the PNI club pollution cover insurance is available to us. These are the challenges at the moment. Oil pollution, oil is emanating from vessel, a small amount, but it is still polluting our water. Again, the removal of containers. There are more than 200 containers lying on our seabed. We don't know condition whether it contains chemical or not. It is removing of these containers was one of the issue. Again, the waste disposal, final disposal waste is another issue with us. These are some issues, but meantime, we are getting some help from international agencies, even SACEP and other international agencies like UNDP and other agencies. That is all from my side with the time restriction. Okay, thank you very much. I think I have given you some brief overview of incident and our response mechanism. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gunasekara, for your eye-opening presentation on the recent environmental emergency which caused significant damage to our ecosystem, and also for briefing on where we stand at this moment. So I would like to request once again to all to submit your questions to the chat box so we could take them up during the Q&A session later. Our next speaker for today is Ms. Irushinie Wedage. She's a director for Parley for the Ocean, Sri Lanka, and she would speak on the role of non-governmental organizations in addressing the impact from spills from maritime incidents. Ms. Irushinie, please go ahead with your presentation.
Thank you, Priyankari. Can you all hear me?
We can hear you, Irushinie.
Right. Thank you very much. So thanks once again to SACEP for organizing this webinar and for the opportunity given to me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. To set the tone for what I'm going to talk about in the next 10 minutes or so, let me just remind you what an NGO is. As the name implies, NGOs are entities that are independent of governmental influence, and usually they are not-for-profit. NGOs, like based on their footprint or where they operate and create impact, can vary from very big international organizations to local level, very small community-based organizations. And their focus could be either very generic, like environmental conservation, or very, very specific, like protecting one particular species, like a seahorse or something. And the others could be anywhere in between the two. For many, the term NGO means activist groups and charities, but NGOs also include professional bodies, advisory committees, and even alumni groups. So if you take a look at the history of environmental conservation, you'll see NGOs have played a significant role hand in hand with other sectors to achieve conservation targets. And there is no exception for marine spills as well. In order to talk about the role of NGOs in marine spills, first, I'm going to take you through the process of marine spill prevention and response. Now, this is a very simplified version of an extremely complex process. Now, from what Mr. Gunasekara presented, you have probably seen how many things that we have to look at in an incident like this. But this is a very simple snapshot of what is going on. First stage is where we try and prevent a spill. Right? As you know, marine spills incidents are very international and transboundary in nature. Therefore, there are many international treaties, conventions, addressing these matters. Like, for example, the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm Conventions. There is MARPOL that is covering some of these issues. Then there are national level policies and legislation. Now in Sri Lanka, as Gunasekara mentioned, there is a Marine Pollution Prevention Act. And also there are fill response guidelines and manuals put together by organizations like IMO, International Maritime Organization, and there are national level preparedness plans. So when these organizations like the UN or a national, like a government body, when they're putting together these kind of documents, they are working in consultation with NGOs. In other words, they draw on the experience and expertise the NGOs have. Then after a spill happens, we activate the emergency response plan. So then comes the response stage, the second stage, which is the immediate or short-term things that we do. There are so many things that you can see. And when it comes to a marine spill, speed is of the essence. Now, this is happening in water. It's a fluid medium. You tend to disperse very quickly due to the wave action, the current. And in order to minimize the impact, we need to act fast and contain the impact. To do this, we need more heads around the table, more legs on the ground, and the government alone cannot handle such situations because they don't have all the resources they have. Because, I mean, the more the merrier in a situation like this. Especially in resource-poor countries like ours, the help of the other sectors is very important in terms of time, the personnel, and also expertise. And that is where NGOs can come in and fill these gaps. NGOs, depending on their capacity, can help with many of these activities listed here. For example, they can help with spill monitoring and sampling and spill analysis. Now, Parley was helping, Parley is helping MEPA to analyze some of the samples that they wanted analyzed. And also, when it comes to cleanups, now, volunteers is one of the biggest strengths NGOs have. And we need a lot of volunteers to, go out there and do these cleanups and stuff. So that is also one thing that NGOs can help with. Then comes wildlife rescue and care. If you look at work-based wildlife rescue and care teams, mostly they are NGOs. And if you look at damage assessments, ecosystem restoration, and research, now the best scientists in the field are sometimes, like most of the time, they're representing NGOs. Now the government has certain experts, but if you look at some of the very well-known scientists in Sri Lanka, they are from the NGO sector. And also looking at compensation claims and stuff, and you need good lawyers, environmental lawyers, and again, good lawyers can be found in NGOs who are very happy to help in this kind of situation. If we also look at these fishing closures, livelihood recovery, and compensation distribution. Now, these kind of activities need negotiations with the general public, the community. And these could create social unrest at times. And NGOs can act as an intermediary party to facilitate this kind of dialogue between parties because they're independent of the government. So I'm going to take a few, so it was just a few examples that I gave, and in the next few slides, I'm going to show you a few things that Parley has been doing on this front. This is Parley, Brazil, cleaning up the beaches after this mysterious oil spill happened in 2019 in the northeastern coast of Brazil. And this is us trying to do nodal cleanup. Now we are helping MEPA with cleanup, and we are working with the Coast Guard and Sri Lanka Coast Guard and the Navy because we are not yet allowed to gather big numbers of general public to do cleanups due to the COVID situation. But we have the equipment ready. We are trying to bring down some nodal sifting machines as well to help the government of Sri Lanka to recover from this problem. And also, after testing, as I said, we are helping MEPA with some sample analysis, like field analysis. After that, based on the results, we will be helping the government with nodal processing as well. So these are some of the things we've been doing post this Express Pearl incident. And this is us training some of our partners to do cleanups. Now, that is like capacity building is another thing that NGOs can do to help these kind of situations, because the government officials, they are actually working as a coordinating body. They have very important things to look at representing the country. So they can use organizations like us and other NGOs to go and, because we have the expertise and experience, to go and train another set of people so that they also can get involved in this kind of activities. And another thing that an NGO could do, and probably the government can't, is raising funds. So immediately after this incident happened, we started raising funds for Sri Lanka. So as an international NGO, we are in a very good position to raise funds for response and recovery work. And we have raised a considerable amount of money so far, and that money is what we are using to bring down equipment and do this analysis and all that I've been talking about. And if you take a minute and look at the bigger picture, now all this time we've been talking about the response and preparedness for marine spills. But if you take a step back and look at the bigger picture, you will understand that these spills are a grim reminder of the excessive movement of these toxic and environmentally harmful materials. So excessive movement means excessive demand and excessive usage. So ultimate solution, all these things that we are doing is great, but ultimate solution to this kind of issues is in finding alternatives to these toxic materials. So sustainable energy sources, sustainable materials, etc. So NGOs, like on top of this, can play, and they are already playing, a very big role in this, advocating for more sustainable options. This is some of the stuff that we have done as Parley. This is us lobbying against plastic at the UN General Assembly in 2015, which was a very big moment for us. We are trying to push the world away from the harmful material. Again, this is very high level, but this is what we do on the ground, like with the communities. We are educating communities to avoid plastic, so on and so forth. Now I'm talking about plastic because that is our area of focus, but like many organizations who are working on sustainable energy or other sustainable materials, they can do the same. So in summary, this is how NGOs can help prevent and respond to marine spills. And I think, I would say their contribution is second to none. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Irushinie, for highlighting how non-governmental organizations such as Parley for the Oceans can be a part of the solution during such disasters. So let me now invite the last speaker for today, Mr. Samuel Durrance, who works as a technical advisor at International Tanker Owners Pollution Federation, which is an organization established on behalf of the world's ship owners to promote an effective response to marine spills of oil, chemicals, and other hazardous substances. Mr. Samuel will speak briefly on the lessons learned from spills of plastic pellets. Mr. Samuel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you just confirm you can hear me all right and see the presentation?
We can hear you.
Great. Okay, fantastic. So yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today. Some really interesting presentations there. We've basically been invited to discuss about some of the lessons learned from previous spills of plastic pellets that ITOPF has been involved in, and provide more of an international context of incidents or similar incidents that have occurred around the world. So as was just described, ITOPF is one of the leading spill response organisations in relation to shipborne pollution. We've been operating for around 50 years now on a non-for-profit basis. And we respond to all sorts of pollutants originating from ships, including oil primarily, hazardous and noxious substances, other pollutants and plastics. We are based in London, but we have a global remit, and we've responded to around 800 incidents around the world, shipping incidents, some of which involve container vessels. So these are just a few statistics on container vessels. Container or shipping in general is integral for the world's economy, and it's particularly important for some of these island states. But unfortunately, incidents do happen, and containers are lost either through after collisions, fires such as the Express Pearl, and stack collapses. On average, there's around 1,500 containers lost each year, but due to deficiencies in the reporting system, these numbers may be underestimated. So due to the contents of a lot of these containers, which varies very widely, obviously a significant amount consists of plastic. Most of the container incidents we've been involved in has involved an element of plastic pollution. And over the last 3 or 4 years, we've been involved in a number of incidents responding to plastic spills, but this includes 5 that includes plastic pellets or plastic nurdles. So just a bit of background on what these plastic pellets are. These are essentially the pre-production material used to make all the plastic items that we use on a day-to-day basis. They're very small, about 5 millimeters in diameter, very light, and more often than not, they float, so they're subject to currents. So, like I said, over the last 3 years, we've been involved in 5 incidents. I'm just going to give you a bit of a background on the 3 incidents that have been most noticeable, 2 of which I've been involved in, 2 of them in South Africa and 1 of them here in Sri Lanka. I'm not going to go into too much detail about the Express Pearl because Mr. Gunasekara has kindly gone into great detail on that element. But this will just kind of demonstrate how the incidents are similar in some ways, and that the responses are also very similar, but also highlighting some of the lessons learned during these incidents. So the first large nurdle spill we attended was in 2017 in the port of Durban in South Africa, and following a storm in that area, 3 containers fell off the MSC Susanna. 2 containers contained plastic pellets, both high-density polyethylene and low-density polyethylene. So in total, approximately around 50 metric tons were lost, and due to the winds and the currents, these spread and contaminated over 200 kilometers in the KwaZulu-Natal region in the north of South Africa. And this impacted a mix of fairly pristine environments in national parks, but also environments near more populated centres where the background contamination was also an issue. So the response in this case lasted around 3 years. On average, there were 300 people on the different shorelines each day for those 3 years collecting plastics. And the response was officially signed off in 2020. And it was estimated that around 70% or 35 metric tons of the nurdles were collected in this case. So shortly after this incident was actually ended, or the cleanup was ended, there was a second incident in South Africa, just off the coast of the Western Cape, near the Cape of Agulhas. In this incident, there was a stack collapse whereby 31 containers fell overboard, and approximately 6 containers contained plastic nurdles, or these pellets. In this case, it was the linear low-density polyethylene pellets, and the total quantity loss was around 150 metric tons. So due to the prevailing currents in this area, there's quite strong currents coming down from the northeast, called the Agulhas current, and also currents pushing up from the south onto the west coast of the South Africa, carrying nurdles up towards Namibia. So overall, it contaminated around 1,600 kilometers of shoreline. And to date, the shoreline response has been going on for 263 days straight. And so far, they've collected 37 metric tons, so about a quarter of what was lost. So that was one of the biggest known nurdle spills to date until the Express Pearl incident in Sri Lanka, which I'm sure many of you are fully aware of. But this incident occurred just off the port of Colombo at the anchorage. As Mr. Gunasekara indicated, the vessel at the time was carrying around 1,500 containers. But the amount lost to the environment is currently unknown. I know there's a number of operations going on to map the seabed to identify where those containers are, but there's also an unknown quantity still on board. In terms of the plastic contents, just focusing on the containers carrying plastic pellets or these nurdles, it's now looking to be over 100, but due to challenges with the cargo manifest and actually identifying those specific containers, they're still quantifying how many were actually lost. But the contents in this case was a mixture of high density polyethylene, the medium density polyethylene, the low density polyethylene, linear low density polyethylene, and polypropylene pellets. So quite a mix of plastic items there. So because of the unknowns and due to the fire and not knowing how many containers have fallen overboard or remain on the wreck, the quantity lost is currently unknown. But what we do know, based on the maps that ITOPF have created and provided to MEPA on a regular basis, the extent of contamination so far, based on areas that have been surveyed, is approximately 300 kilometers. But this is likely to increase due to the nature of the pollutant and how quickly they can move. So to date, the response has been going on for around 61 days. I do understand that around 1,000 tons of debris has been collected, but understanding the ratio of plastic to sediment in those bags is still currently unknown. So the total recovered is still unknown. So just in terms of the kind of environments that were contaminated during these incidents, here's just a bit of a comparative slide. We've got the two incidents in South Africa, which were basically involved long stretches of wide beaches, particularly in the 2020 incident that covered some very pristine environments, but due to their remoteness, there were a number of logistical challenges, particularly with the cleanup. Getting people to those areas that have been particularly contaminated, but have been difficult to get to. In Sri Lanka, however, the beaches are slightly different. They're equally as long, but they're much narrower. There are a lot of areas they're deconstructed beaches, where the beaches are eroding over time, but then will become constructive as well. But we're also seeing in areas where nurdles are, there's also a large quantity of background plastic, pre-existing macroplastic from municipal waste. And this causes a number of other challenges when it comes to the recovery of plastic nurdles. So here's just another example of how they compare between the three incidents. Although the concentrations differ somewhat, the distribution on the shoreline from what we've been seeing is somewhat similar. What we see is new nurdles washing up on a daily basis on the tidal cycle and distributing on the strand line. What differs in this case is the presence of large quantities of macroplastic debris originating from the ship, including the nurdles, burnt nurdles, and other items as well. So we're having to recover all of these items and separate them into different waste streams for later disposal. So in terms of the response methods, since we first got involved in nurdle spills, it's remained fairly basic in the methods that can be used to clean up the nurdles. Initially, it started off as purely manual in the South Africa incident in 2017, and this involved mobilizing large numbers of people onto the beaches to manually collect the nurdles using sieves and separation buckets. But as we've been involved in a number of incidents, the tools available to us has improved and become more sophisticated. So in the 2020 South Africa incident, we introduced the use of vacuum systems, which proved very effective, very effective at removing those large quantities of nurdles in those high deposition areas. And then finally, in the Sri Lanka incident, we are employing kind of all those different techniques. So we've got the sieves, the separation buckets, the nurdle vacuums when they arrive. We've managed to distribute a number of these trommel systems that have been manufactured in Sri Lanka. And as of yesterday, as Mr. Gunasekara indicated, there has been a number of mechanical beach cleaners arriving into Sri Lanka. So in the bottom right hand corner there, you can see the Beach Tech Sweepy, which is produced by a German manufacturer. And MEPA have had 10 of these delivered, and OSRL, the contractor involved, have also procured another 5. So in total, there should be around 13 of these machines operating in the coming weeks, which should hopefully improve the recovery rates of the nurdles. So in terms of lessons learned, over the 3 incidents ITOPF has been involved in and the 2 that I've been involved in, what is very clear is that plastic nurdles in particular are extremely mobile. They're very easily influenced by winds and currents. So when they are released into the marine environment, they spread very quickly. So as I was saying, in South Africa, because of that prominent Agulhas current coming down from the north, and where the nurdles were released, it distributed it over a large area, and that's why around 1,600 kilometers of shoreline was impacted. Here in Sri Lanka, modelling results or predicted modelling results have indicated that due to the prevailing currents and winds, there is possibility that some of the nurdles can spread from or will spread from the west coast to the east coast. And that's why the survey system that we have in place with MEPA is so essential, because then we can track that movement over time and coordinate and distribute resources as quickly as possible to effectively recover as many nurdles as possible. And then because of this high mobility, the situation is very dynamic. So the teams on site have to be very reactive and very mobile. In one day, you might have a lot of nurdles at one beach, and the next day there might be nothing there at all. So understanding that dynamic nature of the nurdles is important for the long-term success of the beach cleanup. And then finally, one thing we have realized is because of this mobility and the dynamic nature of the nurdles and the way they spread, and because of the kind of the rudimentary techniques available to us to recover significant quantity of nurdles, the cleanups are often very laborious. It requires significant amount of people to be mobilized to beaches over a long period. So as you would have seen from the initial incident in 2017, that took 3 years to clean up, and that was only 2 containers, but there were 300 people cleaning the beaches every day. Similarly, in the second incident, there are large numbers of people cleaning the beaches every day on a consistent basis, and that's exactly what will have to happen in this case in Sri Lanka. And given the difference in numbers, we'd expect or require more people than those previous cases. So this is just to kind of quickly touch on some potential considerations that you might want to go away and think about. Number 1 is establishing a compulsory mechanism to declare losses on containers. At the moment, there isn't such a mechanism in place. So although we have statistics on the number of containers being lost, we don't have the full numbers. This is something that the IMO are looking into. But
Sam, excuse me, Sam, you need to hurry up a bit.
This is my last slide, I promise.
That's good.
The second one might be to recategorize the nurdles to ensure stowage below deck is put in place, and this will prevent any nurdle containers falling overboard in future cases. Third point is the way they're carried and packaged. What we've realized is the packaging, once released into the environment, isn't particularly robust enough, so they quite easily break up. This is something that the suppliers and the manufacturers might want to look into. And finally, in countries where background contamination of background plastic is an issue, it might be useful to consider removing other pre-existing macroplastic and focus on those areas. For example, you could achieve a net environmental benefit by removing an equivalent amount of macroplastic plus an additional percentage. That way, removing it very quickly from the environment. Although scientific literature indicates that microplastics are greater in abundance, in terms of volume, macroplastic pollution is considerably worse. So thank you very much. That was just quite a quick presentation, but hopefully that gives you a bit of international context to other nodal incidents around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Samuel. The knowledge that you shared will direct us to find the best solution for current and future maritime issues, I'm sure. So once again, thank you very much all the speakers for your interesting and informative presentations. Let us now move forward onto the question and answer session. Thank you for providing your questions and concerns on the chat box, and we will be addressing as many as we can during the Q&A. So let's move on to and take the first question. So we have a question. We have a question. How should we address the issue of lack of regulatory oversight for handling and emergency procedure for plastic pellet losses at the global level? Anyone from our speakers would like to address this?
Sorry, can you repeat the question, please?
How should we address the issue of lack of regulatory oversight for handling an emergency procedure for plastic pellet loss at the global level?
I guess similarly to spills of other pollutants, that would come down to the IMO probably becoming involved, and like they have done for oil pollution and H&S, maybe define one specifically for spills of plastic pollution. As we've seen though, in all the cases we've been involved in, although they do spread and cause quite significant shoreline contamination, if organised quite quickly, they can be recovered in due course. It's timely, but as we continue in these responses and develop the mechanisms, hopefully the amount of time it takes to clean up the shorelines won't take as long.
Okay, so yeah, thank you, Samuel. And we have another question. How can we integrate the remote sensing satellites for more resilience, forecast and management? Who would like to briefly answer that question?
Could I suggest that maybe we can respond to some of these questions afterwards? You know, if you can share the questions and then maybe we can respond a bit more formally.
Yes.
That might be best, because I know there's people better positioned in ITOPF that might be able to respond to that question, and I wouldn't want to give an answer that doesn't fully answer the question.
Okay. So are we okay?
I mean, just for that particular question, that's something that we could probably provide further input on.
Okay, we have a specific question that is for Irushinie. Maybe she could answer. What kind of positive response has the NGO advocating against plastic been seen locally among children?
Yeah, can you hear me, Priyanki?
Yes, we can hear you, Irushinie.
Okay, cool. So, great question. You know, as children are very open-minded, when we go and talk to them about plastics and the problems of plastics, and then we ask them to, you know, look around, how much of plastic are you using? Can you make a list? And then they go on and on and on making the list, because then they understand that they are using a lot of plastic. And we normally take them to, you know, a beach or some place to do a cleanup and let them understand some of the things that they listed can be found on the beaches. So they take it very well. So they're very positive. They're taking it very positively. But as you know, with any awareness programs, there is always an awareness and behavior change gap. Like there's this gap between raising awareness, accepting it, then practicing it. Like but when they were like presented with simple solutions, rather than just saying plastic is a problem, don't use it. But when this is coupled with a solution, and when we present them with a solution to what we are asking them not to do, they are very taking it very positively, and they even change their behavior. For example, we ask them to use a reusable bottle, and we ask them, rather than using you know, polythene to cover their books, why don't you use like their old cloth or like, you know, a paper material? They always go and try to do it, but then it's very important that these things are even practiced at their homes, and they have the options to choose from. Because sometimes, even if we ask them not to use sachets like for shampoos and stuff like that, if they don't have the means to go and purchase a bottle or a shampoo bar, mainly maybe due to unavailability of these, or they are not economically empowered to do that, so they can't do it. So there is this gap, awareness behavior gap always, but they are very positive about these things. I think I answered that question.
So since we are running out of time, whatever the questions that you may have arisen or haven't been answered in the webinar, you can email them to the email that has been provided in the chat box. Then we can reply to you individually. So now it's time to conclude the webinar. And on behalf of SACEP, let me once again thank our speakers and all the participants for being here and participating actively. We hope you found this webinar informative and the dialogue valuable. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.